Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with My Son. This is Tarun and I'm joined by my regular co-host
Kian! And we got a surprise guest today.
Kian. Who is your surprise guest?
My head teacher.
Your head teacher. Normally we do this in our house, either in your playroom or our study or somewhere else. We're also in a different location recording somewhere special today, right?
Oh yes, in Mr. Cooper's office.
Oh, you already gave it away. That was supposed to be your surprise. So our guest is
Mr. Cooper,
your
head teacher.
Hello, Mr. Cooper. Welcome to our podcast with Kian.
Lovely to be here. Thank you very much for being invited. It's my first ever podcast episode of being someone in it, so I'm very excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. And Kian's usually a tricky grill master, so you need to be careful about the questions he asks. But as we go about this episode, usually Kian does a little bit of chatting and he tells us about his experiences in school, which he's already done in a previous episode. So we thought it would be great to have you on board and listen to your story about how you're a head teacher and how naughty Kian is in his school.
Oh, awful. Terrible is Kian.
So I'm going to hand it over to Kian because I know he's got a few surprise questions for you. And then I think we'll keep it interactive and let you jump in and you know, chime in with your questions that you may have for Kian, because this is your chance to grill him outside of school as well.
Pleasure.
All right, Kian, over to you for your interview with Mr. Cooper.
Okay, can you tell me a bit more about your experience as a head teacher?
So I have been a head teacher now for, what are we now, 22, I would say about 9 years. This is my 10th year or 10th school year of being a head teacher. And this is my second school that I've been a head teacher at. And I was a teacher first, and then I was a deputy head teacher for about 3 years. And then the school that I was working at asked me if I could help them out for a little bit as their head teacher for a short while, and I never stopped doing it there. So I was there for 7 years before I came here, just over 2 years ago now, or under 2 years ago now, sorry.
Amazing. And for our listeners who are not in the UK, the head teacher is the equivalent of like a principal.
Yes.
or you know, the senior most person in the school. So
Yep.
Is that a typical path for a head teacher in the UK, where you first teach for a few years, then deputy, and then you sort of make...
It's a bit mixed, really. So my wife, both myself and my wife are in education. She did a very similar thing, actually. So she was a teacher and then became an assistant head teacher and then a deputy head teacher. And she's kind of stopped there, so to speak, for the time being. But most people would kind of steadily work their way to where they feel what they kind of see is right for them, really.
Right, okay.
I like school a bit because I get to play, a bit because I learn more, but I don't like when it gets hard, really hard. So, but it's pretty much, I like school.
Good.
Did you always know you wanted to be a teacher?
That's a really good question. No, actually. So when I was at high school, so secondary school, the kind of teachers there used to work with you in terms of kind of what you wanted to do. And I was never really, really good at one thing at school. I was always okay at most things, but I was never really good at one thing. So when we had like the career chat with the person that was there, they said, well, what is it you want to do? What do you like about, what do you see yourself doing when you're older? And I just said, I don't want to be doing the same thing every single day, because I couldn't do that. So they said, why don't you try teaching? Because you're quite good at most stuff, and it's never a boring day. And that's kind of how I fell into this, really.
Is it really never a boring
Never.
day?
There is never a day where you can come in and have 5 things planned for what you want to get done today, and you will leave with 7 more things that you haven't got done on that day. So it's never a boring day, and there's never a day where you can say, this is what we're going to, you know, how my day as a head teacher in particular will go. Something will always happen because you're working with people, and there's always something new that happens every single day.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
For me personally, I need that.
Okay.
And I like that. things just crop up and you
But
kind
it's
of
not
have to
for-
solve them.
It's not for everybody.
Definitely not for everyone. No.
How did you prepare for it?
So, for me, I didn't rush my way up to becoming a head teacher. That was never something when I became a teacher, it wasn't, I want to be a head teacher. I became a teacher because that's something I wanted to do. And I did that for several years. And then what I did was I really enjoyed working with my class, and then I thought, oh, can I do this for more than just my class? Can I do it for maybe 3 or 4 classes and things? So I had different jobs leading up to that. So I was what's called a phase leader. So I ran 3 or 4 classes in a school, and then, like I said, I became a deputy head teacher, and then finally they asked me to become a head teacher. But at that time, you had to pass a qualification to become a head teacher. And I did that training. I went to kind of the university courses to do that, to kind of be seen to have this qualification to do it. Nowadays, you don't necessarily have to do that, but 10 years or so ago, that was kind of the thing you had to do to be a head
So they
teacher.
just make it easier for everybody now.
Yeah, I think kind of easier. I think it's more accessible. I think lots of people would be put off to have to do that.
Right.
There are several fantastic leaders that I've worked with that would probably be put off having to do something like that, but they would be brilliant head teachers.
Got it.
So it's not necessarily a lowering of what you need to do. It's more kind of actually opening it up for more in that way.
Right.
Do you like kids? Is it hard?
It's very hard. I think there are real challenges, like I said, because every day is different. You can plan to try and get certain things done, but you don't always get that done. I think the hard part is the amount of changes that happen within the job, whether it is children joining and leaving, whether it is things from above, from the government and things in terms of what happens for that. But actually, I that's something I really enjoy, of dealing with change, it is really hard, and I think the term times that you have are really, really intense. So it does consume a lot of my life at the moment, but I wouldn't change it. It's a brilliant job.
Okay. What are the best parts of being a head teacher?
For me, it's the little things that you see the children do in school that has kind of come from an idea that you have in your head, and then to see 100, 200, 300 children then living that out is amazing for me to see. Just little things of when a child maybe is having a bit of a bad day in class, and actually you then see them really enjoying their time in the school in that day is lovely to see. So for me, the best bit of my day is working with the children and seeing them grow as children and as people.
We get awards. Like that's the thing when we get. So on Friday we get awards for things like that, don't we? So, what the worst parts?
Oh, the worst parts. I think there's a lot of pressure at times within that. So whether it is from, dare I say, parents at times to put the pressure on in that way, I think that you are working with people and the people coming into school, whether it's particularly the children, you don't know what their day's been like before they've come to school, and it's trying to help them. I think, not being too political here, but in terms of the money aspect of that's coming into schools, that's really challenging for us to try to do what we do with not always enough money to do that with. I think that's really, really challenging. But as I said, I like a challenge. If anything, if I've learned something over the last 4 or 5 years, is I enjoy a challenge.
And that's good, and that reflects in the school, because as Kian said when he started, he enjoys school, and I'm guessing that's part of the motivation to let the kids have a good day in school, and I'm sure there's somewhere in there a fondness or a liking for kids.
Absolutely,
that has led to this.
Yeah, you couldn't do it if you didn't. And I think as I've grown up, for myself, the understanding you have of children in that way just grows as well. So yeah, it's brilliant.
So let me ask you, and you've done this for many years, but as a kid, when we went to school, and I've seen the difference, but also probably because it was outside the UK versus the UK, but has the philosophy or approach to teaching and managing kids changed? Because with us, it was always the saying was spare the rod and spoil the child,
Yeah.
and our, like, let's just say our teachers were never shy of using the rod, so to say.
Yeah.
So but now there's all the consciousness around like abuse and all of that stuff, but obviously I've also just generally seen a more sort of balanced approach towards teaching and things like that. So has that changed even in your time doing
Oh,
this?
definitely. I've been involved for education now for over 20 years, and for me there have been really really big changes that's come in. I think, as you said, that more holistic, if that's the right word, approach towards children it has come in, and I think the styles of education that you have change, and actually there's not a one size fits all for the children. It's very kind of tailored at times to what those children's needs are,
Right.
And it's making sure that all of the children, regardless of where they're from, or for their own kind of academic background in that way, that we get them to reach their full potential, no matter what that potential can be.
Right. And I'm guessing, well, I've seen it a bit as a parent as well, but they generally respond better when you're sort of encouraging them along, as opposed to being more rigid or strict about things.
Absolutely.
But at some point you probably need to draw the line that
we have a standard, and we do, whether that's a working standard or a behavioural standard in that way. And I think if you're very clear with what those standards are with everyone, and you're consistent with that, then I think the vast majority of children kind of respect that and will, that rising tide kind of idea in that way. There are times where you have to have a quiet word with children and get them to reset and regulate themselves in a way. But I think if that respect is there between your staff and the children, then they're normally very, very compliant and do a good day.
That's good.
So, are you willing to have a shot at 2 of the silly questions?
I'm always up for a silly question.
So, how many coffees do you drink in a day?
Now, that's a funny one, because I always start early. I have a coffee first thing before I come to work, and then I have one when I get into work. So I'd have probably 2 by about 9 o'clock.
Oh.
But then I don't have any more throughout the day.
Wow.
So I kind of maybe have too much too soon, and then I'm just on water for the rest of the day. So not that many.
So you're a coffee person, not
Yes.
a tea person.
Coffee, yeah. I haven't always been, though. I think that's, again, as a grown-up, I've had more coffee than when I used to.
How do you
Relax.
How do I relax?
Favorite.
Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry, go
No,
on.
no. How do you relax?
How do you relax?
So, I have to run every morning. So that's the one thing I have to do. So that I get up early before I come to work, and that, although it's not kind of staying in bed, helps me to relax. It helps me to kind of get my head clear. That's the right thing as well. I also enjoy sport, so watching sport, and a big fan of football.
Oh, that was his next trick question.
Sorry, go on. Sorry, didn't spoil it. Go on, what was your question?
Your favorite sport?
So my favourite sport is football. I enjoy watching football. I help my son's football team as well. So I'm one of the coaches for my son's football team. So that's
Favorite team?
Everton.
Oh.
Sorry. We used to, when I was your age, we were really, really good, but we've not been so good recently. So when I was little like you, Everton were a very good football team, but not so much anymore.
Favorite player?
Currently or ever?
Or ever, yeah.
Or ever. So in my watching time, Tim Cahill was my football player. Loved Tim Cahill. But I would say currently, a young footballer coming through at Everton called Jared Branthwaite. So he's one of the big centre halves for Everton at the minute. He's very good, and I think he'll be a very good footballer.
I think the reason we ask is Kian is very much into football, and he has the constant debate now whether he should support Messi or Mbappe.
Oh, for me, Messi.
Oh, Kian.
Sorry.
No,
What was your choice?
So I can't decide.
Do you have a football team that you enjoy, or is it more players at the minute?
I get it now. Paris.
Paris. So that'll be
Because they
Mbappe.
both play.
They did. They're absolutely right. Now Messi left though. So Messi
I know,
now
he's
plays
in
for
Miami now.
Miami,
So
yeah.
I'm going to get that one.
Good choice for Paris, though. Good choice.
And then I think Kian has one more trick question before we hand it over to you, Mr. Cooper.
Okay.
Who is your favorite student?
I can't choose a favourite student. There are children that I remember for years and years after I've taught them. Several that I remember from probably my second class that I ever taught. They weren't the ones that achieved the best. They weren't the ones that always worked the hardest. But they had something about them that you just remember in a really lovely way.
Have you tracked... I've always been curious about this because I don't know how teachers do it, but do you ever seek to track your students' progress or want to know what they're up to in their future lives?
Secondary schools are really, really good. So, funny enough, I had a letter on Friday sent to me from one of my old colleagues at my old school saying that a child that I once taught has now been accepted onto the British Aerospace astronaut program. So they're kind of in that way. So he's currently in his second or third year there doing that. So it was lovely to hear that. So I taught him when he was about 7 years old, I think, 8 years old. And it was always a very bright boy. But to know that he's gone off to do something like that is amazing. And the city where we live is quite a small city in that way, so we know a lot about what goes on.
Right.
So if the children and students stay around here, you often end up finding out, and secondary school's really good at sharing that information.
Got it. And you said something that always struck me because I always wondered, like you said, there's always something special about a kid. They may not be the brightest or whatever, but what is that special ingredient in the kid?
It's sometimes the way that it could be the way that they carry themselves, or actually if they have some adversity in their lives, the way that they kind of rise above that, or it could just be the way they look after one another, not just themselves. There's just something about them that you just hope that when they leave you, that will continue. That little kind of something that makes them shine carries on.
All right, over to you, Mr. Cooper. Your chance to make life difficult for Kian.
Pleasure. I try to do that every day, Kian.
That's never difficult.
No.
Oh, life's never
that's
difficult.
Good.
Wow.
That's good to hear. So you asked me about favourite things. So I'm going to ask you some kind of choice ones, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask you between would you rather eat? Okay. So would you rather eat sweets or chocolate?
Sweets.
Why?
Because they last longer.
Good answer. I like that. Okay. Would you rather ride a bike or go on a scooter?
Ride a bike.
Why?
Because I like it more.
Okay. Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
None.
You got to choose.
You've got to choose
Okay.
one.
Which one? Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
Too hot.
Why?
I won't get a cold.
Okay, and I'll ask you two more. What's your favourite colour?
Blue and orange.
So is there anything that's kind of blue and orange that you like at the same... Is there like an item that's blue and orange that you like?
Rubik's Cube.
Rubik's Cube. Have you ever been able to solve a Rubik's Cube? No.
Only the 2-1.
My son, who's a little bit older than you, so he's in year 4, so 1 year older than you, one of his friends watched a video on YouTube to teach himself, and he can solve any Rubik's Cube in under 3 minutes. So he taught himself that. So he's that. Okay, last question then. I will say, what's your favourite thing about attending this school? What's your favourite thing about this school where we are?
I make lots of friends.
That's a really good answer because it's important to have lots of friends in school. And I know you work hard every day, so I know that, Kian. So to have friends as well is a real bonus. So I'm really pleased that you've had that.
He didn't say, but he also enjoys the lunch here.
Good choice. Lunch is very good here, isn't it? I'll make sure I pass on the compliments to Cook as well.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Pleasure.
Thank
Pleasure.
you for having us in your office, and appreciate all the insights. I think Kian and I learned a lot about being a head teacher and what challenges you face, but also good to know how a teacher looks at students and how you approach teaching, which I can appreciate is probably not always the easiest job. So I think when Kian comes in tomorrow, he'll have a newfound appreciation for what his teachers do, right, Kian?
I think so.
No, the answer is yes. All right. With that, we sign off. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.